Hello everyone. There are people in the world who have lost skills that are indispensable in everyday life because of head traumas or strokes. For example, there are people who can no longer walk, talk, or hold a spoon. However, sometimes such tragedies also draw an unexpected fate. Tragedy changes a person from his very essence. For example, his intellectual abilities improve, his senses sharpen, or talents blossom. According to neurologists, after a traumatic brain injury or stroke, the structure of neurons in the brain changes, and neurons that were previously inactive are activated. In this video, we will present superhumans who have gained incredible abilities as a result of a tragedy. The Elastic Man. First, the story of a certain elastic man, Peter Wellbrock, born in southern England. He who, ever since he was a child, loved sports. He was enthusiastic about athletics. In addition, Peter challenged his limits in extreme sports such as parkour. One day, tragedy struck. He failed to jump off the roof of a house while doing parkour and fell from a great height. As a result, he suffered multiple fractures in both arms and both arms. Legs. Peter, who suffered such severe injuries, he lost hope about his life after that. However, this tragedy was not the end of his story. At the hospital, the doctor told him that his bones were recovering and mending miraculously. His parents and his girlfriend at the time, they were very happy with the news. Before long, he left the hospital and his rehabilitation at home. One day, when Peter had his cast removed, everyone around him, including himself, was amazed at his new ability. His limbs would bend in directions impossible to think of, and then return to their original position without causing damage to his body. Medicine cannot explain how ligaments and cartilage can bend and stretch that much. But this is something that actually happened. He was reborn as a Superman. Let's go to the next story. There are humans with powers that might be able to save mankind. This superhuman does not feel any kind of heat. Meta Berndorf. He was 40 years old at the time, and one day, a fire started in his plantation. After calling the firemen until they arrived, Meta kept fighting the flames. For a short time, the fire jumped through his body, but the firemen rushed in and extinguished it. Meta had minor burns and lost consciousness. When he woke up the next day, Meta discovered his incredible power. He could not feel any kind of heat, although he had lost the ability to feel pain. There was no abnormality in his nervous system. How to explain this great mystery? Nobody knows. Jason Padgett. Before he was injured, he was a normal person who liked to get together with his friends to drink. Jason said there was nothing special about his math grades in his student days. When he was 30 years old, he was attacked by two men in a karaoke bar. He had lost consciousness. When he woke up the next day, he noticed something. When he looked at all the things that were around him, he saw them together with the mathematical formula that expressed their geometric shapes. This is a phenomenon called synesthesia, a special sensory phenomenon in which a stimulus is perceived not only through the normal sense, but through a different sense. With that, he saw geometric shapes through numerical formulas and started to sketch on paper what he saw inside his head. The attack he suffered damaged a part of his brain. And to compensate the damaged part is another region of his brain that was not much used increased its activity. This was the story of Peter, who became a mathematical genius. Ken Walters. He is a former engineer who had been receiving disability assistance since 1986. Because of a horrible accident, he had been forced to live his entire life in a wheelchair. Ken had days of great suffering due to the accident and his condition as a wheelchair user, until he had depression. Also, in 2005, he suffered a stroke. However, with the disease surprisingly who acquired creative skills after recovering from the stroke. Drawing doodles to keep his hands busy. Ken realized that he could draw images that looked like some digital paintings. He who had no interest in art at all. But after his stroke, Ken honed his skills more and more. Soon after, Ken founded his own software development company at the age of 51. Ken was hired by the famous electronic arts company, the Magnet Boy. At the time, Nikolai Kryagachenko was 12 years old. On his way home from school, he leaned against a pole on which there was a bare wire, which ended up discharging a high-voltage current through his body. With the huge shock, he was thrown to the sidewalk on the opposite side of the street. But somehow Nikolai managed to get up and get home. The next day he was surprised. All the metal objects in his house clung to his body. Nikolai was amazed by this mysterious power of magnetism. Nikolai became one of the most popular boys in his school. His classmates always gathered around him saying they wanted to see his powers at least once. Because of this unusual accident, he who was a normal Russian student became a superhero that would make even comic book characters jealous. Nikolai says that when he grows up he wants to be a real superhero. Tommy McHugh. When he was young, Tommy started using heroin. But when he was 51, because of a stroke he suffered, the artistic talent within him was awakened. After being discharged from the hospital, he acquires a strong desire to draw and write poetry. The walls and ceiling of the interior of his house were being covered one after the other with avant-garde paintings made by himself. Tommy, a former delinquent. He has been transformed into a strong human being. Now Tommy loves cats and almost cries when he steps on an uncertain one by accident. The next story is about a girl who wishes to remain anonymous. What she tells is that one day she had an accident in a ski area, which is because of this accident, her intellectual abilities have improved a lot. When she fell on the snow, she didn't feel nauseous, dizzy, or the typical symptoms of those who suffer brain concussion. So even though she had a headache and a broken collarbone, she continued skiing that day. A few weeks later, she noticed that her vision, sensibility, and memory capacity suddenly began to change. She now had an exact memory of all the places she had visited in the past. And not only that, she can perfectly draw the layout of all the buildings she has passed or those she has only looked at from the outside. The last story is about Haint Young, who lives in China. On a night with heavy rain and lightning, he was returning from a bar. Drunk Haint did not write the rain pass and ran straight home because he wanted to sleep soon, but in the middle of the way he is hit by lightning and loses consciousness. Unconscious and in a serious condition, the doctors were amazed when he woke up in a short time. He recovered. He was released from the hospital and at this point gained an amazing ability. Haint can move at an unbelievable speed. His movements are once or twice as fast as a normal person. In addition, his speech and thinking have also accelerated. In short, he has transformed into a man with super speed. And that's it for today. Thank you for watching. I hope no one gets into an accident or gets hurt. After this video, do not in any way try to imitate what you see here. If you are thinking that someday suddenly I want to be reborn as someone with superpowers, keep trying hard and honestly, that day will surely come. Remember to leave your like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next videos. We have 2 more super powerful videos for you to watch. See you next time. Bye.